This show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers in Portland, Oregon, who live to help brewers learn more and ferment better. Join our recipe-receiving Patreon groups and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Oh man, it's always something. Hey, and welcome back to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing, and today I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com, Mr. James Carlson, who's usually below me, but now he's over there. And then below me for this episode is Mr. Todd Burns, the President, Chief Keg Washer, El Jefe. My friends, how are y'all doing today?
Good, thank you.
Awesome.
Good. I like the answers. You know, when people ask how you're doing, like in a retail setting or like at a fast food joint, I always try to just one up the just like the okay, because, you know, if you just say okay, then I like going really good, and then they get excited and they're like, really? I'm like, no, but how are you supposed to answer that? I don't understand it. But anyway.
Well, you know, I've got to tell you, I haven't had a good week. You know, I wonder how many of those they get.
That's exactly my thought process. Todd, you look like you were going to say something with your cool glasses.
I was just going to say my back kind of hurts right now.
That poor, you know what? And it's funny, but you're not even joking, I bet, because like last time I was up there last week, I mean, I think that's the most excruciating pain I've seen you in a while. You were out for the count, but you also are always like, I don't know why my back hurts or whatever. 8 hours of labor working on that Keezer build and lifting things I know you're not supposed to be lifting yet, and doing all this work. And then at the end of the day, James, he's like, I don't know why my back hurts. What am I
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. You know why I never hurt, Todd? Because manual.
Now it makes sense.
I'm smarter than I look, or lazier than I look, or whatever. All of the above. Thank you for joining us for the Homebrew Happy Hour. We hope that you are doing well. We hope that you are brewing frequently, if possible. We have the brew days coming up. We have a lot of stuff to talk about coming up. Homebrew Con. We have not just the Patreon recipe kits going out. I don't know, James, they told me you brewed a cream ale.
I did.
Yeah. I don't know if you were doing that just for recipe recap, or were you in the mood for a cream ale?
Well, we've got a new recipe, and Lorena sent us a recipe on what was that? A cream ale. That's what it was, cream ale. And we were testing it out to see how it went. I tried to go exactly the way she said to do it, and it turned out pretty good. First time I've ever brewed with corn or rice, too, by the way.
So Joe and Zach also brewed a cream ale, but they brewed a different recipe. So I think it'll be real interesting on the recipe recap to actually taste both of those, because they are different. Pretty different ingredients, and I think the taste will, definitely be able to tell the difference in the two.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When they told me you brewed a cream ale, James, I didn't believe them, only because I didn't think that you brewed, with corn. Or I guess in rice as well as in the cream ale, you were saying?
Yeah, I was definitely not to the Reinheitsgebot standards.
You're like, I know you're not German. You're not Czech. You're Norwegian, right?
Right.
And having to tell your ancestors in your dreams, like, I'm sorry. And I'm not even German, but I'm sorry.
was so weird.
Have you even done, that I might be mixing up Scandinavian areas. Kvik is a Norwegian strain, right?
It is.
Have you even have you used it yet?
I've tried it. We tried that at HomebrewCon, and I wasn't a big fan, but maybe I had the wrong one. After I drank it, I was like, I don't know if I want to brew this.
All the hate mail, I hear it coming in the inbox right now. It is the hot thing. You do Reddit now. I know you're on Reddit a lot. And if you go in the homebrewing subreddit, it's always like, this is the best strain ever. We need to use it. I've never.
Yeah, we need to. Plus, you can brew it in the middle of the summer and not have to worry about the temperature at all.
True. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely need to try it. Just that's my personal opinion, guys.
Yeah.
That's not the standard according to
Matt's iTunes review that
Homebrew
comes
Happy
in.
Hour.
This show is full of a bunch of dummies. They don't. First off, it's not my Bach, it's Maybach, idiots. And then, Todd's nodding his head like, that's.
I kind of agree. Yeah.
Every time, Todd. Oh, you're frustrating. All right, before we get to the show, I do have some small talk. First off, if you're a member of our recipe receiving Patreon group, which is $35 a month for every other month, or $50 a month and you get a recipe every month, we have announced, you've already gotten the message because I've heard back from 90% of you on which recipe you're going to choose, but our options for June are two very delicious options. The 8-bit wit, which is a Belgian witbier, which is a white beer, very pale and cloudy. It's a wheat beer, but it's super popular for this time of the year. And I think if you chose the Hefeweizen last month, you'll be very happy the way they complement each other, even though they're kind of foundationally similar. And then the other option is a Bohemian Pilsner, which I'm excited about because I'm trying to convince James, or after the show, to brew me another Bohemian Pilsner. James,
we need to do that. Yeah.
I would love that. And Todd, maybe you could do the 8-bit wit, or maybe me and my dad could do the 8-bit wit for the recipe recap. We could figure it out. Obviously, we could brew the same thing, but we'll figure it out. You're not. I was trying to goad an answer from him. He's just so stoic and. Again, that's
okay.
That's something normal people would edit out. Not this guy. I've never brewed a Belgian wit beer. I don't know if any of us have brewed it, but Joe said it's incredibly popular for homebrew supply recipes that go out, and especially right now this time of year. He's like, we go through them a bunch. I think the listeners are really going to like it, and I would say right now, out of the of the recipe receiving Patreon, we have like 30 something people in it. And I think right now 29 have given me a reply. And of those 29, like 20 have chosen the 8-bit wit. So either they know something I don't know, or it's cool recipe artwork. Maybe that's all they're doing is they're looking at the artwork between the two. And I didn't make the 8-bit wit artwork. I only did the Bohemian Pilsner artwork. So theirs is much better. And they're like, oh, that looks better. Let's just pick that. But I will.
Well, I brewed a Belgian lighter beer, recently, and it was very good. I'm sure that the yeast will be a Belgian style yeast, and it'll, so it's kind of be a cross between a Hefeweizen and a Belgian. That does sound good. So
Imperial, we are working out because again, with the global pandemic, still a thing still going on. They're having issues giving us firm, like, yes, we can for sure supply you with this. And they're doing a very good job at just, Joe has a list of which Imperial strains are supposed to be available, and he's reached out to them this week, and we're going to have it hashed out. We'll update the post and message everyone. But yes, both recipes are getting Imperial yeast. So whichever one you pick, you're going to have a good brew day with the Imperial yeast. I'm confident in that. I can't tell you how just incredible the feedback I get from listeners or from customers even who found our show through the little flyer that goes out with Tech Connection orders, and they'll say like, I'm not on the Kolsch train yet, Josh, but all y'all do is talk about Imperial yeast. So I tried it and goodness. And I was like, I'm telling you, it's not, they don't
change your brew.
It would change your brew day. I'm a firm believer. Like when I get the glycol and, or I don't even know if we're going to do the glycol setup because we're working on something else for maybe doing that build out cold room for my dad. Once I get a conical fermenter, whether it's on glycol or in a cold room, I think life is going to change for our brewing operations, like consistent beer, having the ability to control everything down just because we have such control of temperature. That's the dream, man. I think that's the homebrewer dream. As opposed to like the days we always talk about of like, well, my beer was in a closet, wrapped with some towels, and nothing's wrong with that. That's a wonderful way to brew. It's just, it's the moving on up, right? Like I'm finally getting to that point where I could play with you guys, and we all say things about your fermenter. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what y'all are talking about.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. And I'll tell you what, in-house, Zach and Joe are using that Spike Flex Plus, and Zach's being very pretentious about it now that he uses nice equipment. When we were talking, he's like, he needs us to bring the Blickman beer gun, which is an incredible piece of equipment as well. And he's in a bottle, and I was like, but you're in the fermenter still, don't you need to keg it to use that? He goes, oh, Josh, the fermentation's already happening in the Spike Plus and the Spike Flex, so I can bottle directly out of it using the beer gun. You really didn't know that? And if no one listening knows Zach, but I'm telling y'all, if you knew him, it's like when he called me fat when I came up to headquarters last week. He was like, oh, did you stop working out? You look fat. I was like, okay, I'm starving myself for a week now because this guy called me fat, but now I'm just digressing. But anyway, so yes, if you're at our $35 or our $50 level, those are the recipe choices for Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, we have announced already that we're going to be giving a talk at HomebrewCon online. We're going to be presenting, it's called In-Depth Draft Beer Systems and Building a Keezer. It's going to be the three of us at 4 p.m. Central on June the 18th for virtual HomebrewCon. And by saying us three, I'm going to be producing it to make sure our signal's coming through. It's really going to be James and Todd's ugly mugs. Right? I like that face.
Todd's the pro on that. I think he's done a phenomenally good job on that thing. It's amazing. It's a work of art.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. It's probably the funnest, or it is the most fun Keezer build I've ever done. I've done a handful of them, but this one's really cool. I'm excited about showing it off and showing people how to build it. I think that after building several over the years, I've learned some definite mistakes and things to do differently, and it may not be perfect, but it's. I think it'll be a pretty good Keezer build.
Would you agree that it was more enjoyable because I was there the whole time? Like, is that like a factor you would say is judging like why it was such a fun experience?
Yeah, you weren't there the whole time. I built it, did most of the work when you weren't there, or half of it at least.
Oh, that's just not nice.
And then when you were there, I still did 90% of the work. So.
I was holding a camera. What do you expect from me? I can't double duty. I am a creative type. That's how I process things. I was taking breaks like every 5 minutes, James, and he was like,
"Yeah, he's like on his computer the whole time." And I'm like, "Do you think you could film this part?" And he's like, I guess so.
It's a creative process. You don't understand the creative process. But where I was segueing this, so again, if you're interested, and not just in our talk, look, HomebrewCon as an event is an incredible event. Obviously, I would much rather have been in person in Nashville. It is a way more enjoyable experience when you're there with other brewers. The talks are great or whatever. So yeah, the communal part of it's getting taken out, but the speakers are still wonderful. Even if you exclude us schmutz, it is really good lineup. Our friends who never remember my name, Annie Johnson's giving a talk. I believe Michael Ferguson might be giving a talk. I don't remember if I saw his name there. Lorena Evans, Blickman. There's a ton of people still giving a ton of really good talks, keynote addresses and whatnot. If you're already a member of the American Homebrew Association, it's $99 for full access. And if you're not a member, I believe it's $139. But we are doing a giveaway. We have 5 tickets for online HomebrewCon that you can win if you go to our show notes. If you're on YouTube, it's in the description below. If you're watching this from our website, it's in the show notes right there, right in front of you. Or you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com/HomebrewCon hyphen, which is a dash, online hyphen giveaway. And it's kind of a bummer of a URL, but if you can just remember homebrewhappyhour.com, it'll be in the show notes for this episode 185. And we announced it to our Patreon members, and I've already had 12. And I literally just announced it before we went live right now. So I'm excited, which is also to say, if you read the instructions on filling it out, just your name and your email. But it does ask you, are you a member of our Patreon? Any tier, $1 to $50. If you're a member of our Patreon, to say thank you, we're giving you an additional 15 entries into the contest. Not trying to rig it for anyone. We just want to thank you guys who are in our Patreon. We like to give back to y'all, and I hope that we adequately express how grateful we are for our Patreon community. They, especially lately right now, COVID has been crazy. The world's been crazy, and we have a very good, solid community. The homebrewing community has always been my favorite community of all the various communities I'm a part of, especially the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community is okay, but they choke me. The homebrew the homebrewer community is very together and coming through and supportive, and it's just incredible to watch. So yes, go to homebrewhappyhour.com/hombrewcon-online-giveaway. Go to the show notes, enter in, whether you're a Patreon member or not, you have the fair chance at winning. And we want to send you to virtual online HomebrewCon so you can watch us give a talk about draft beer systems. And joking aside, James and I both read the outline that Todd has created for it. It's going to be a really good presentation. If you're new to draft systems or you're a pro, I promise you there's something there for you. Todd spent a lot of time going over it. And now, unfortunately, we're going to spend a lot of time rehearsing it because that's the kind of person Todd is, where we're going to go over it and over it and over it and over it until it's memorized like the back of our hand. So Todd gets insufferable when he's preparing for public speaking, but it is what it is, right, Mr. Burns?
Yeah, that's what you got to do. So, and there's one other criteria as well. You do have to be a member of the Homebrew Association to win, because, one of the things we're running into right now with COVID is that, they're really suffering. They're really having a difficult time. And we want to encourage people to be members, to support them. So that's one of the criteria as well, is you need to be a member. Now, if you join it and you win, you could still attend. You just have to become a member. And becoming a member is not very expensive. I think it's
like $39 for the year.
Yeah, 39 or something like that.
Yeah,
for the year.
And you're right.
And you want to be a member anyway.
The sign up did say that. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, that is an important clarification, because it would be heartbreaking when you win, and you don't want to then spend $39 to be a member. But the membership comes with, you get discounts to a lot of area or national type of places. In your local area, your homebrew supply shop may give you a discount. I know our retail stores online give homebrew, American Homebrewers Association discounts. You also, their app Brew Guru is very nice and helpful. And then you also get Zymurgy, or is it Zymurgy? Is that going to be a Maybach? Is it Zymurgy or Zymurgy?
You know it will.
I think it's Zymurgy now that I just said it, but I'm going to say it's Zymurgy and stick to my guns. That magazine, I'm a sucker for print design, and they do a real good job with that. We used to run a front page ad on there, but Todd's cheap. But no, kidding aside, we love what the American Homebrewers Association is doing, and they have, like Todd said, we can't express enough. If you can support them, please support them, because if we don't now, they're not going to be there in the future. And then it's going to be Homebrew Happy Hour, Homebrew Con from Todd's compound, and like 8 people. And it's going to be $1,000. And that's just how it's going to be. And you don't want that future for Homebrew Con. You want it to go town to town, city to city, and have a party. So all of that out of the way, I believe I covered everything. Let's move on. I got questions for today's show. The first one comes from our buddy Jake, talking about Patreon. He used the message form on patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. Jake wrote, I've been using the Blickman beer gun, and it seems like my bottles are coming in undercarbonated. My keg pressure is around 8 to 10 psi. Then I bleed it and set my pressure to like 5 or 6. Then I purge the bottles with CO2, I fill them, and then put a buffer of CO2 on top before capping. Would you know why my bottles seem less carbonated? My dad and I, remember when I brought up the alt beer, I think it was the alt beer, and one of the first things y'all noticed was it seems a little undercarbed. I don't remember if we covered it in that episode of Recipe Recap, but do you think the undercarb is happening at point of bottling, or do you think it's an issue inherent to the beer going into the bottles? I'll start with you, James. Well,
it could be something. The first thing I would ask him is, did it foam a lot when he filled it up? Because a lot of times if they just fill it up until the foam runs out, a lot of that foam could be CO2. Well, that is. That's exactly what it is, and that may be why it's coming out flat.
Todd, have you, with your experience of the Blickman beer gun, have you had undercarbed issues, or did he do it to the book? And maybe there's some more info we need.
Well, I mean, I think the first question I would ask, because he's saying his keg is carbonated to a level where it's 8 to 10 psi. That, I mean, 10's probably okay, but most people are 10 to 12. I don't know if possibly his beer might be a little undercarbonated to start with, but it sounds from his posts like he tastes the difference between pulling it off the keg and putting it in the bottle. So I'm going to assume that it's not.
That's a good point.
But I definitely think that you probably want to have your beer carbonated on the higher side if you're going to be bottling it using the beer gun. And then when you use the beer gun, it sounds like he's using it correctly, but you definitely want to purge it well, of course, and because of other issues, it'll get oxygenated. And then you want to make sure there really should be no foam to speak of, like James said, because with that counter pressure, you shouldn't be creating any foam. So if you're creating foam, you may not have the stopper down hard enough, or you may be running into some other issue. I haven't personally had an issue with it. When I've bottled with it, the beer hasn't been undercarbonated. So I don't know. I don't really know what else it could be.
I know. Well, first off, when I read him saying that he puts a buffer of CO2 on top before capping, my dad and I, funny story real quick, he was trying to do that, but it blew out way too much, and then the beer started flowing out, and it was like, what? It did not work out that great. But using the beer gun, for us, it almost seems like any other piece of equipment that you kind of have to dial in to your setup, if that makes sense. Like our kegs and our are all pretty similarly carbed in what we pressure to dispense at. And then, when we're bottling, we try to keep it as consistent so that we can write notes to go, we're going to open that bottle in a week and try it, or I'm going to take it up to headquarters. And if it's like, oh, that's undercarbed, hey, the next time we're doing a bottling session, let's, maybe crank up that serving PSI the day before we're going to bottle and see if that helped out at all. I agree with you, Todd. I didn't even think about that. You're right. In context, it does seem like he's able to compare his bottle to the keg and notice undercarbonation. So what, Todd, what is,
and I don't do the cap at the end either, because if I've purged the bottle really well, and then once I've finished purging the bottle, I'm filling it full of beer, then that beer should be pushing out everything that's still in the bottle should be CO2. So when I pull it apart and cap it, I've never purged it before. At the end. I mean, I've purged it at the beginning, but I've never done the buffer at the end.
Well, and I don't know if the instructions say to my dad. I don't remember actually now if it was on accident or not. It was our first bottling ever, and he's filling it up, and then he got it up to where he wanted it, and then all of a sudden I hear, oh, expletive, and beer was like on him because he had the gun like basically still in there, and he hit the wrong trigger. It's very important, guys, to know how you're using the equipment you're using. Shout out to Pop. But it was just funny because like a nice little science experiment volcano, of some foam or whatnot. I think adjusting his pressure like a day before, if he's keeping it as low as 8, would you say, James, hey, maybe the day before, put it up to 12 and see if that helps?
Yeah, ideally, if in a perfect situation, if you had a Taproot makes a really cool carbonation tester. If you want to get real scientific, you could make sure the carbonation is dead on where it needs to be, or maybe just a little bit more, like Todd says, because you're going to lose a little bit when you fill it up, when you fill the bottles. But I've never used the beer gun, so.
Well, you haven't used the beer gun?
Never have, huh?
Oh, I don't know why. I just assumed it was up there at headquarters, but it makes sense. You don't bottle.
Bottle. I really don't.
So Jake, the lesson of this whole episode is, why are you bottling? No, I actually, the beer gun, if we do like a holiday episode this year for gift ideas, the beer gun's definitely going to be on it for me. That's my contribution, because I wouldn't say bottling is enjoyable. I will say that the beer gun makes bottling acceptable, and it's not as big a pain in the butt as it used to be, where if you're doing the carbonation in the bottle and the prime, having to do the priming sugar. And
yeah, I mean, the whole point, Zach was talking about basically, and I thought they brewed a bigger batch of beer. Did they just brew 5 gallons? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I mean, you could infer that because they're using the Spike Flex Plus, which is only a 6 point.
Yeah, it's for 5 gallon.
It's for a 5 gallon batch, exactly.
Oh yeah, I must misunderstood. I thought I saw 2. I thought that both the big fermenters had beer in them. So,
Zach actually brewed a batch of beer that he has in the Spike.
He brewed one by himself. I didn't know that. Wow, look at Zach, and he's getting. Yeah, he may be our new host soon, right? So,
y'all are slowly getting me off the show. I get it. Go ahead, Todd.
So, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but he was talking about bottling 5 gallons of beer with a Blickman beer gun. I've never really thought of that as what it's for. For me, it's because I want to take a few beers somewhere. I want to send a beer off to a contest. I've got some reason that I need a few bottles. I mean, if I don't really, if it was me, if I was going to bottle a whole batch, I would just probably bottle it the old traditional way because it's so fast. Right? Yeah. You just put that, you put it on the bucket. You have the little bottle stick that you push down, and it fills it up, and you cap it, and you're done. And it, of course, carbonates then. But I mean, it's I don't know. I've definitely never bottled a whole batch of beer using it. So
yeah, I would imagine most people with the beer gun aren't doing that. And I think carbonating in your fermentation vessel is a relatively new concept for home brewers. Would y'all agree? So I bet it's probably most people have the beer in their keg. And like you said, Todd, they're giving beer to their family for holidays or their or contest. A lot of our listeners, even though they're new, a lot of questions come in about, hey, recommendations on entering this. We're going to have to enter, guys. I think that should be a goal of ours when things go back to normal. So 2029 or whatever year things finally go back to normal, we will all have to individually start submitting to more, because that's like our listener base. I am so surprised by how many, I get 100 emails a day, and half of them are about like feedback. Like, hey, can I send you my beer and you give me feedback? I want to enter it into a contest. And I tell them, you can give me your beer, but I'm not a judge. We will drink your beer, and we could go over it on Recipe Recap and give you our feedback, but it might not be as meaningful as what the competition judge is going to give you. But
it might be enjoyable to enter. I don't know why I've never had much of an interest in it. I probably should, and I should enter some beers in the future.
I guess for me, there's that pride factor of getting tore up by the beer you brewed, and it's as I get older and as I brew more batches of beer, it becomes less and less important.
Oh, my friend, wait until we do a recipe recap on my Kolsch. We still haven't recorded that episode. I've been
purposely saving your red IPA too.
Oh no!
The burnt IPA for the recipe recap.
No, that's Kenny's beer. Sorry, Kenny, throwing you under the bus.
No. We're definitely doing a recipe recap on that. I've been saving it in my kegerator, taking up space so we could do.
What are you going to compare it to? Like, what is there a beer on the market?
We don't have
we get mud.
We don't always compare other beers. Sometimes we just talk about that beer. We're just going to talk about that beer.
We're gonna scoop out some mud and scorch the bottom of it, and then do the clarity is about the same.
I haven't tried it recently. Maybe it's aging really well.
Oh, shut up.
It might. You never know.
No, y'all are doing the same darn thing that Todd does when he's goading me into a $5 bet, which I've lost 3 in the last 9 days. It's the worst, but he'll always be like, now that you say that, I could be wrong, but I did offer the bet, so I'll let you do the bet if you still want to, even though I don't feel good about it anymore.
I don't always feel good about it.
Screw you, man. Yeah. But anyways, Jake, thank you so much for submitting the question. Here's how nice a guy Jake is. I reached out to these people beforehand to tell them, hey, we're doing your question on the show. He is donating it for a future giveaway to people listening. So his $25 gift card, he wants to donate. So we're going to have that as part of a giveaway coming up soon because of the what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a B, darn it, not beneficiary. Benevolent. Man, brain fart. Because of how benevolent our patron is. Jake, thank you so much, my friend. He's a good dude. So anyway,
That's awesome.
Thank you for submitting your question, Jake. Moving on to Frank D, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Frank wrote in, I have a stuck fermentation with an original gravity of 10.6 or 1.06. Actually, fermentation never really started. I originally pitched a Y yeast 3887 Trappist liquid yeast. I have listened to your show long enough to know that pitching some dry yeast might help. When I pitch yeast for the second time, do I re-oxygenate the wort? Thank you for your help. You guys are awesome. Frank, that is a great question because I have, he submitted it last week. I saw it and I sensed the urgency of it. So we kind of emailed him stuff, but I wanted to still do it on the show because I think it's very common. And some of the issues that Todd covered in the email back to us when I originally sent it, I think are more common than people know. So Todd, what was your initial thoughts when you got this question?
Well, I'm going to say this first and foremost, because he did tell us what the gravity reading is, but I've had this question many times with people. They really weren't sure what the original was, or they were confused on their current gravity reading. Yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is make absolutely sure whether it's fermented any or hasn't fermented any, because if it's fermented substantially and then you re-oxygenate it, you're going to have issues. You're going to oxygenate your beer. So I would not re-oxygenate it if it's already fermented a lot. If you feel like it really hasn't fermented at all, then I don't think it's going to start to ferment if you don't oxygenate it, because it's been sitting there forever and it probably has absolutely no oxygen in it, right? So I think at that point you're better off re-oxygenating, although there's probably still some risk because I don't know how much it's brewed. Yeah, he didn't actually tell us what his well, no, he did say it was original gravity. I guess it's still at that, so he knows it hasn't done it at all. So yeah, I would re-oxygenate it most definitely, and at that point, and maybe do a starter,
definitely,
so that you can make sure you've got some good active yeast that's got a little fuel in it before you put it in there. Because if you just sprinkle some dry yeast on the top, and you're probably not going to get. And it didn't work originally with liquid yeast. It's probably not going to work sprinkling dry yeast on the top. It may, don't get me wrong, but it sure would help to do a starter and have a little fuel to get it going, I think. So, and James, what are your comments on it?
I agree 100%. I would think that the risk of oxygenating a wort, you better know really, really for sure that has not had any fermentation going on. But I'm with you, Todd. I'd do a starter. You can always oxygenate the wort before you add the yeast in the starter, and you can really get it vigorously going, and then you can add that into the stuck fermentation. Remember, we had that problem with the lager I did, the Maybach, and we were able to save that batch of beer and got it going.
Yeah,
it's in my kegerator right now, so I
That's
thank
right.
you for doing that. That's the only beer. I think it might be the only beer I have left, except for that wonderful red IPA, which I'm going to have to try tonight, I guess.
Oh man. And I did my part, by the way, to drink that Maybach. My Maybach is what Todd's calling it, I think. It's not your Maybach, it's my Bach.
No, it's not May. Yeah, it's not May's my
Yeah,
Bach.
that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did my part though. Todd, every time he turned around, he saw me with using the CM Becker event faucet pouring out of the fridge. And he goes, "Is that another one?" I was like, "It's a Kolsch glass. Don't judge me." And this is like 4 p.m. We were wrapping up shooting. Okay, don't judge me. I've had two kind of scenarios similar to this, and both times I've called James and Todd or Joe. And both times, one time I called you, James, and fermentation wasn't happening, and you told me, like that's why I keep dry yeast. That's why I tell you to keep dry yeast. And my dad and I made
some on hand.
Yep, and my dad and I made a starter, and sure enough, it kicked off the beer, and it ended up being a real good batch. It picked up, and the second time I did it, and that first time too, you had also walked me through what Todd always starts off where. Because we usually ferment in buckets or that Genesis. The Genesis is kind of see-through, and one of the batches we had that we thought never started because we didn't see it, any kind of krausen or fermentation activity inside the Genesis. That's when you were like, yeah, make the dry yeast starter, pour it, and then boom, good to go. On the bucket, this is where I think is more common than maybe people know who use buckets. Todd was like, you're not seeing any activity in the airlock. I was like, no, my dad said there hasn't been any, it's going on 30 hours or whatever. And Todd was like, it might not be that there's no activity because the yeast in theory should have been healthy. It might be that you have a little bit of a break of the seal, right, Todd, in the lid?
Yeah. In fact, I actually went up earlier today, and I was in the area where we have our buckets, and I looked at about 20 lids and realized that they were all perfect. But the lids I have at home, there must have been a batch, or maybe I did it somehow, but they all have little ribbons of plastic that are kind of going off there. And I have to take a razor blade and shave them off because of those little ribbons of plastic are actually going over the O-ring that's on the lid and allowing air to, or CO2 actually, to escape. Hopefully it's CO2 and not air. And that's the problem that I've had multiple times when I thought my beer wasn't fermenting, is it was fermenting fine. It just wasn't bubbling because it was going out that little slit.
And that's what it was for me and my dad on one batch, because opened it and like, it's krausen. Oh my God, it's growing. Put that thing back down and like you said, shave off that thing and make sure the O-ring is actually able to seal, which fortunately it's not like there's a lid defect. It's just, when companies are mass producing this stuff from, I'm assuming it's from a mold, right? Those lids have got to be from mold. It's not someone hand making each.
No,
lid.
they're injected, molded, just like anything else plastic.
Right. So there's bound to be sometimes a blemish or whatever you want to call it. I guess defect is the right word, even though it doesn't keep it from actually working. You can just. Fortunately, it's an easy, quick fix, and
it does keep it from actually working.
I mean, though, okay. When I hear defect, I think of like you have to return it, and there's nothing you can do about it. But
right, a blemish.
Yeah, Todd will argue semantics with me and make a $5 bet. Like, are you saying they wouldn't call it a defect because it sounds like a defect? Oh, you know what? You're probably right. It's not a defect. It's something. It's a blemish. Look, before we contact the manufacturer. No, anyway,
So I think that I think it's pretty common, and I've never ever had a batch of beer that's happened on where it hurt the batch of beer. It had enough pressure and enough blowout that nothing was coming the other direction, and it didn't cause any problems at all.
And then one final thought, guys, before we wrap up Frank's question. Is there let's say he opens up the bucket, or it was me. I open up the bucket and there's definitely not krausen, no evidence of it. I make my starter. Is it necessary to reoxygenate? Like I need to, or is it okay with the starter to just dump it in case you're worried about messing anything up? Would you say yes, reoxygenate for sure, then dump your starter?
No, not for sure. I would definitely take a gravity reading to see where you're at. And where you were, always take gravity readings when you pitch your yeast. And then if it's stuck, take another reading so you can tell how far along it went. And just because of oxygenation, it can really kill the taste of a beer. And you don't want to take that risk.
Yeah, I had a customer last week that told me that he didn't think his fermentation started. And I was like, what's your gravity reading? And he's like 1.002. And I said, you mean 1.02? I said, well, what was your original gravity? Well, I didn't take an original gravity reading. So we looked at the recipe and we said, it should have been 1.067. And I said, okay, so you've definitely fermented quite a bit if you're at 1.02. And he's like, no, I'm at 1.002. So I said,
crazy.
I said, wait a minute, you're going to have to send me a photograph of your hydrometer. And we're going to have, so he sent it to me and I was like, okay, can you send me a photo of what's down below? Are you sure it says, original, is the gravity, are we looking at the right gravity? Or are we looking at percentage of alcohol? What are we doing? Specific gravity, of course, what we're looking for. And he sent me a photograph and his beer had hit 1.002. And I was like,
damn.
That was his first batch of beer he'd ever brewed, all grain at least. I think he'd ever brewed, but he started with all grain. I was like, you should stop right now because nobody ever gets that low. Right?
Yeah, that's dry.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, Todd then asked him to send him a bottle of the beer. What kind of beer was it? Do you remember?
It was an IPA.
Yeah. So James and I are okay. No.
Yeah. That's low. I mean, that's like brute low.
Yeah. It was. I told him it's going to be a little dry. And then the other thing, I mean, not to drag it out forever, but he also he actually got it to 5 gallons and then boiled it down to like 3.5 gallons.
Wow.
And I was looking at all the scales and everything, how much fermentables he had in there, and I was like, you might want to be careful when you're drinking that beer. I think it's going to have about 10% alcohol in it. So
it'll sneak up on him for sure.
But if you don't do readings, it doesn't matter. You're just feeling good, man. Just drinking. No, this is the obligatory insert an overlay right here that says, always do gravity readings, our friends.
That's right. In fact, funny story is I talked to a little brewery and he gave me a little tour. And it was so funny because he didn't take any readings. He didn't use a thermometer.
He fermented in trash cans.
Trash cans, and he used trash can liners as an airlock. But yet he could tell you he would put on there, this one had 5.5%.
Oh, shut up!
Had 9.
Oh no!
Yeah, and I'm like, well, where are you coming up with them numbers? And he was like, well, I just know what I'm doing.
Oh,
and you guys are just wasting too much time with all that other stuff.
Oh, no. Oh, that's so cringy. It's a brewery, or it's like air quote brewery. Like it's a brewery.
No, they sold beer. I went there before.
Well, you say it in the past tense. Are they still a thing? Are they still open?
I don't know.
Oh, no.
The beer was... Well, anyway, let's move on.
It was special.
No, let's do it. Let's do a Homebrew Happy Hour showcase, brewery showcase. We'll go there with the camera. Todd's face as he's drinking it. It'll be like when your dad drinks a sour. Oh, that's nice.
Like brewery nightmares.
Yeah. Well, that's different. Yeah. Anyways, Frank, thank you so much for submitting your question. Last question of the show came from Joshua W. He used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Joshua wrote, Josh, hey, great first name. I agree. In fact, you have the best first name on the show. I've had some free time now, and I want to finally convert my unused freezer that's in my garage into a Keezer. You posted some pictures of a Keezer you and Todd were working on, so I'm hoping that you guys will publish some info sooner than later. That should help me. But until then, what would you say is an appropriate size for the collar or trim or whatever you call it? Does it only need to be big enough for my shanks to drill through, or is there a different functional purpose that I am not thinking of? I love the show, and I hope you take my question, Joshua W. We did submit some really cool photos, of the Keezer build. People are excited about it, Todd, first off. It is easily the prettiest looking Keezer that I've been a part of. Now, with that being said, I would love for any of our listeners to submit their Keezer builds. And actually, maybe we can include it in the presentation for HomebrewCon to show just
that's a great idea.
In a quick slide, right? Like, hey, here's how we did it, but here's how other people do it too for inspiration purposes. But
we used a textured paint on it, and I sprayed it right over the white, and it doesn't cover instead of actually priming it first because I just roughed up the paint. I was using the original paint as primer, and I mean, we probably spent like $100 on spray paint, right? Because we had to spray so much of it. So that was one mistake, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We will log the mistakes. Yeah.
Thank you.
James, the last day I was up there last week, which was the second week of the Keezer build, he's doing some touch-up spray painting in the barn. The doors were closed, and like 10 minutes later, he's at his computer. I'm at mine. I'm like, are you high? I feel a little high right now, but not the good high, like the headache high. And not that there's any good high, Mom, if you're listening. I just meant, like high school sniffing a marker because your buddy said it was the kind that are supposed to smell like fruit, but it was just a vis-a-vis marker, and now you're going to the office because they caught you sniffing markers. That kind of high. But I think the collar, getting to Joshua's question, great first name. I think, from my understanding, there's a couple of things. One, it is to provide clearance for you to be able to drill through something for your shank so that you don't mess up the refrigerant lines. Like, you can for sure know if you're drilling through wood, there's no refrigerant lines in there because you added that piece. But also my understanding too is to create clearance for whatever vessels you're having in the Keezer, right, James?
Yeah, height for whether you're using a regular conventional keg or a corny keg or a ball lock or pin lock keg, you need to have enough room to where you can put the coupler on top and still have enough room to shut the lid.
And Todd, I know one question that I had when we were building it, and you answered it not condescendingly either. It must have been a good question. When you built out that collar, because some people were commenting, making jokes like, "Oh, is it a big enough collar?" You did it for aesthetics, but also though you did it to make sure you had the clearance for the vessels, but also that you could create it to seal, because you can put whatever kind of collar you want if it's not fitting right to allow it to seal. I mean, is that even going to be a functioning Keezer at that point if it's not sealed across where the lid meets the collar?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things. One, it's more than one collar. There's an internal collar and an outer collar, and then the internal collar is typically either I've seen people use 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s. We even have a Keezer here where we use 2x12s because that's what we had sitting there, right? It's a very small one. 2x12's a bad idea. It's too tall, and you can't get down there to pull the kegs in and out. James can.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's one person here who can, not us. Yeah.
So, 2x4, you need to measure it because you could very well still be too short, and the kegs don't have enough clearance to put the hose on and have the disconnect on it and everything. I think on the one we built, we used 2x6s, which are really, I think 5.5 inches, because it's a 2x4 is not 2x4. It's 1.5 by. I'm really screwing this up now.
I know. I like
1.5 by 3.5, I believe. I could be off a quarter inch on that, but anyway, so it's not exactly. And then the collar. So the interesting thing on the collar, when I went to Home Depot and to buy the expensive oak collar boards, they were out of 2x6s and or 2x8s, and 2x6 was too short, so it wouldn't have covered it and made it right. So I ended up buying 2x10s, and so it is a little bit bigger, but I like the look. And the other thing I liked about it was that it allowed the drip tray that we used to go almost to the bottom, so it supported the drip tray. If we would have used a shorter one, there would have been some, I think, swing in the bottom from the drip tray, because we used one that has that actually goes up with the stainless quite a ways. And I like the way it looks, but realize that the internal one is only 6 or 5.5, so I can still bend in there and get to stuff and work on it, but I still have plenty of room for the kegs to clear. Usually have a shelf in them, and you also want to make sure that your CO2 cylinder is going to clear, because you're probably going to have to put it on the shelf. We used a 10-pound, and it's got plenty of room. So, there's reasons for everything on it.
What was the capacity of the freezer that we converted? Somebody asked
14,
me.
I believe.
Oh, was it only 14? I'm glad I didn't answer them, because I was like, God, it's probably got to be like 18 or 21 or something.
I think it's 14 cubic feet, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's big. It's a big one.
It is, and it fits yours fits 8, right? I mean, we made it a 6 tap, but it can technically fit 8 5-gallon kegs.
It's 8 fine, and on purpose, because really, one of the problems you have is if you make it if you have your Keezer exactly the size as the number of taps, you don't have anywhere to put your extra kegs of beer if you're brewing more than 5-gallon batches like we do. So we love to have extra storage space. Quite frankly, there'll be a lot of times when I'll have 8 kegs in there, but I'm only serving 3 or 4 beers, because the rest of it is just the same type of beer in an additional keg.
Yeah,
and it's nice to have that extra capacity. A lot of times space is always an issue.
Yeah, so, I would guess that 6 will be if we're having our company Christmas party, if we're if we've got a special event going on. But the vast majority of times, and unfortunately, I'm probably not going to have 6 5-gallon kegs in there at one time. So
you're right. It will prevent you from having to share with me now, because you're like, I don't have to give a keg of beer for you to take home and bring back when you're done, because I have the space for it now.
Well, see, the whole sharing thing, originally, the idea behind it was, when you brewed beer, you'd give me a keg of beer, and when I brewed beer, I'd give you a keg of beer. But when it's only one direction, it's not. I don't
one way.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. These edge strap. I've been bringing bottles. I mean, we've been doing 5-gallon batches. You're right. When we do 10-gallon, which has only been 3 batches, you got your keg. We brought you your keg. I understand, Godfather, the offering I have to bring to you. I do want to ask though. Now, is the collar necessary if you for sure know that you're not going to drill through a refrigerant line? Like, are you doing that also for some, like, hear me out, because I don't know if this
I mean, it's a crazy question. Of course, if you know that you're not going to drill through a refrigerant line, then it's not needed. But, well, it is still needed because I've never seen one that was tall enough. But two, how do you know? I mean, maybe if you took cut the back of it off and lifted up the metal, just cut through the sheet metal, the thickness it was, lifted it up, pulled the insulation out, and looked for the refrigerant lines, then you could do it that way.
But I'm willing for you to call me an idiot. I'm just saying my thought process was also like jockey boxes. When we made a jockey box out of a ice chest that I already had, that ice chest is now purposed, right? There is no going back to being a normal ice chest. It is the jockey box. I guess I could cram that hole with something if I wanted to turn it into a normal one. Or I say holes. There's 3 holes, right? I just meant like, I also imagine that it makes if in 10 years that fridge is still going, but you're not doing beer, hey, you just take it apart and boom, now you're back to, remove the temperature, the thermostat controller, and it can be right back to being used as a freezer, right?
That would be the other advantage of having a collar, is that you just take the collar off, put the lid back on where it was, and you can use it as a freezer again.
Yeah, because you can even use the same screws that attach the hinge to the main body in the collar. So it's real easy to retrofit back.
Nice. And that's what I'm about, making the most bang for my buck of the things I buy. I wanted to say, Todd, before we wrap it up, you got a haircut. What the crap, dude? I wasn't getting a haircut because I was trying to protect my mother-in-law. When my mother-in-law came home with a haircut, I made an appointment with the same person that cut her hair and got a haircut. So that's what I love the most. Todd is seriously the most diligent man ever. The people he loves most in life are some of the most immunocompromised, because of age or health reasons or whatever. And Todd has done his part. And then, when your mother-in-law was like, you came home one day, like, you look nice, Mary. I got my hair cut.
She had the whole thing done. I was like, wait a minute. That's the reason I look like
surfer dude,
a hippie from the mid '60s. So I like surfer dude.
You do look like a surfer.
I did tell him to leave it longer this time, so
it looks good. You're right.
The number 6, if that makes any sense to you, and she left it quite a bit longer than I used to get it cut. So, but once I was done, it doesn't really feel longer because I kind of miss that look.
It was looking pretty good, man. Especially when you walk around in the office with your Hawaiian shirts and shorts.
You did look like a surfer. You did look like a surfer in his 60s. Oh wait, I mean a 60s surfer dude. I'm sorry, Todd. That was
absolutely.
Rude. Anyways, Joshua.
I have that mentality. So
yeah, brah. Okay, Joshua, thank you so much for submitting your question, my friends. That will do it for this week's episode. I appreciate y'all taking the time out of your busy day. Again, just recapping, I'm going to be up there a lot coming up because we got to rehearse for a presentation next week. And then the following presentation is HomebrewCon, the following week of June the 18th is HomebrewCon. So y'all are going to see a lot of me in person, for better or for worse for you guys. But thank you so much.
So you're going to be here for 2 days next week and then 4 days the following week?
5 days. Because I'm coming up Monday. I'm going to drive up Monday and I'm not leaving till Friday.
Okay.
Get your beer fridge ready. I'll bring the cigars. Y'all get the beer fridge ready.
Hey, bring some beer. I'm out. Yeah.
I'm bringing more fruit because your friends drank all of my fruit that I left up there for us to drink.
I was referring to kegs of beer.
Oh, I don't have. Yeah, if I had a keg of beer, I would love to. Yeah, you can. I'll bring the Kolsch. My dad would love to get rid of that out of the fridge. The Kolsch.
So we've got to, we got to think about this. If we time this right, guys, I think we can have 4 different beers in that Keezer when we do HomebrewCon, and We'll have plenty of beer to drink during the presentation. So
I'm hoping to do it sloshed. That was my plan. But anyways, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all doing the show with me this week.
Thanks.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question that you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Imperial Yeast, for supporting us and the homebrewing community. Join any top tier of our Patreon community and you'll get free liquid Imperial Yeast shipped out to you with your recipe kit. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour for more information. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.
This program is made possible by the checkbook of Mr. Todd Burns and by contributions to our newly launched Patreon by viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join our community. Thank you.